All right, live from Denver. It is Friday night. Let's make sure it is. We are all good to go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Critical Conversations for another week. This is the week of, today is November 4th in the year of our Lord, 2022. And as sometimes, most of the time, and always happily, I am joined by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
So we are happy to be with you again for another awesome hour of power live streaming here on YouTube. And I see everybody in the stream, in the chat there, all the usual suspects. And good deal there. Welcome. What a week. What a week. What an interesting time to be alive with, I don't want to go there too much, thematically today, but, midterms, they're happening. Everybody's a little, I don't know about.
A little nervous.
Yeah, a little bit, I think. I think a lot of people's nerves are a little ramped up around election time, because of all the ads and the phone calls and the texts and the stop to quits and all these endless numbers of things you get from people that honestly, I'm actually, I'm happy to have that problem living in a liberal democracy that we live in. But as somebody pointed out, this week on, what was that? On Bill Maher, we were watching that last night. Elections alone are not the thing that make a democracy. It's the structure and the freedom and the rights.
Changing and the updating as you figure things out.
That's right. Progressiveness, in other words, changing with the times, not staying stuck in time, which is an interesting feature that cults have, is that they tend to fix in time with the leader or leadership's ideas, morals, especially morals. They really stick on a moral plane with rigid rules and behaviors that are completely outmoded as time rolls on. Because the one thing that you can count on with people in society and culture is that we are going to change. Things are going to fall out of fashion. New ideas are going to come along. People are going to have better ideas about how to realize human and civil rights. At least that's kind of been the course of things. And if you kind of at least this is kind of how I look at history. But anyway, not to get all serious and all that, but just kind of thinking out loud about the significance of elections and voting and the fact that it's really, 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 all I really want to say, I don't have any candidate favorites or anything like that at all. All I want to say is I really encourage everybody out there to vote. Make your voice be heard. You have no excuse not to. At least in terms of if you are able to do it, you got your ID, you got your registration, you can work all that out. Please do so and make it happen. Whether you do it by mail, whether you do it in person, whether however you get it done, do it. Because social media posts and tweets and this and that and the other thing don't matter at all when it comes to an election.
No.
Right? At all.
Nope. It won't change anything.
Yes, you must vote. All right, guys. Okay, Nikki, so far, thank you. Now, this show is not a Q&A. So I always feel bad when people are throwing questions at me in the show, because in the comments, because generally speaking, I'm not looking for them there. And I'd hope I'm not disappointing people in not taking them up and answering them, because that's not entirely what this show is about or for. So I see these questions, but please send them to me by email at askchrisshelton@gmail.com or put them in the comment section of my Q&A videos, as I always like to say, so that if you really want an answer, that's how to get it. Maybe, randomly, if we get a minute or something, maybe I might answer a question, but it's not really what I'm trying to do with this show. So I just want to let you guys know, so I'm not disappointing you, or how come he didn't, I don't know. I don't know if anybody even gets upset about that, but just trying to say that. Thanks, Nikki. I definitely appreciate your viewership. We got things we want to talk about tonight, and I don't want to also cut across anybody's ability to call in. This is a call-in show, and speaking of, our number is 984-214-4154. Yes, and there will be definitely, of course, I try to at least once a month do a live Q&A so that we can, and I go for an hour and I try to pack as many answers in there as I can as we're going. Okay, so I see we have a call in the queue. We're going to pick that up, but I wanted to just say a couple things here first, real fast. First off, how are you? How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. Yeah.
Good.
Feeling a lot better. Yeah.
Excellent. And I totally spaced on this before, but did you bring a quote? Because
Yes.
I did. Okay, let's have it. Let's get the Mel's quote of the week out, because it's always enlightening and fun to hear that.
All right. It's about frustration. Laughter and tears are both responses to frustration and exhaustion. I myself prefer to laugh since there is less cleaning to do afterwards. Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh, let me see that.
Yeah.
I want to read that where was that? Laughter and tears are both responses. Huh. Yeah. That's right. It's good. Vonnegut. Excellent. Good stuff. All right. Sometimes you think you got wires caught down there. Good deal there. And just because I can't resist, since you guys are sitting here talking about it in the comments. The Rosicrucianism. Look it up. The Rosy Cross. That's Scientology's origin story on their cross. Okay. Can't help myself. We do have some stuff to go over on the Masterson trial, which we can do as time permits here. There were a couple quotes from today's testimony of reporting from Tony Ortega that I wanted to highlight and go over with you guys, because today there was a witness, an expert witness, who spoke about domestic violence and mentioned coercive control, and she talked about memory and testimony and stuff like that with assault or trauma victims. And there was some very interesting information in there that I wanted to make sure was not missed, because it was almost a little masterclass in how coercive control works in domestic violence in domestic partnerships that go south, and how that coercive control, how people respond to it, and abuse and how they respond to it. It's not necessarily what you would think. And I thought that was some of the most, obviously the victim's testimony and the three women who have been testifying during the trial, that happened this week. And that was some heartbreaking, oh man. Mm-hmm. Oh, reading some of that was rough, because you're dealing with sexual assault. You're dealing with nasty behavior. And it really made me, it also reminded, we've been so focused on the Scientology side of this trial and how Scientology's been an undue influence in the lives of these victims and in, Masterson and all these people, how they provided air cover for them and protection. But I don't know that we've really just kind of taken the time to go, hey, you know what? Danny Masterson's a real dick. And this guy acted as like a monster in his relationships, according to the testimony of these women. And I just don't know that we want to necessarily, not ignore that fact. I don't think anybody's ignoring that fact, but I think it's not maybe highlighted enough that individual is enabled by Scientology. Scientology didn't create that in him. That's who he is. And it just exacerbates it, of course, and blows it up, just like it did with Tom Cruise's narcissism. He was always that way. But it blows it up. It exaggerates it. As I'm always going on about, it turns the dials up to 11. I should probably come up with a new phrase now. I feel like I say that all the time. Lisa Marie has not yet testified. No, that will come, I suppose, if that occurs next week. This week was mainly the victim's testimony and cross-examination on that. The detectives involved in the trial, in the investigation, were put on the stand over the last couple of days. And then this expert witness came on, and some supplementary or, sort of confirmatory kind of witnesses. Yes, she said this. Yes, she told this to me at this time, etc. So that's kind of what we've been seeing this week. All right, so we've got calls in the queue, and we're going to pick them up. So first, hello, you are on.
Hello.
Hi, David.
Yes, it is.
Hey, welcome to the show. What's up, man?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'm going to say very briefly is that I agree completely with what you said about that there's far worse things than getting ads and phone calls in a democracy. I've lived in a society with no democracy, and trust me, the alternative is far worse.
Agreed. Thank you for boosting my message there.
I mean, it's true. It's like, I mean, in China, the political propaganda is everywhere. And if you dare to try to say anything or even criticize anyone, you'll have somebody screaming in your face about how, oh, it's all so great. Okay, well, it's all so great. What's this problem that we both acknowledge happens? Oh, that's not the leadership. That's somebody else. Okay, who appointed them? Stop overthinking.
Fair enough.
That's where they go. At some point, they literally thought stop you. Stop thinking.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
there's far worse things.
Exactly.
So the other piece of news on Scientology this week, I'm sure you must have seen the insider talking about the ideal org.
I did see that article, and I was very interested in the fact that he had poked his head back up and was speaking again on Tony's blog about that. And it was a pretty interesting article.
Oh, definitely. And I think it more or less confirms, I think it was it the Garcias who made the lawsuit against Flag for the Scientology cross fundraising.
That's right.
That more or less confirms that the base premise of that lawsuit was correct.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And and if I remember right, what he was reporting on is that now they're sort of doing the renos as they're getting the money in, and the amount that they need has come way down. They dialed it down on how much money is required to renovate these organizations, because as we had exposed and talked about in earlier podcasts and episodes about this program, it's a remember, Scientology is a money-making scam, and it's not just the auditing and the materials that they scam money from. These buildings and the renovations of the church buildings.
Yeah, this is the big
millions.
This is the big money-making scam, is the amount of money that goes into the buildings.
That's right.
And those new estimates more or less confirm that most of that money was never going to the buildings. It was going to RTC. So I'm going to ask you, I remember years ago you talked about your time in the Sea Org, and you would go to the different Ideal Org openings, and you would see the event, but then you'd also see the next day that the building was empty, correct?
Correct. Yep, exactly.
Okay,
yeah, you got like 1,000 people there on the street for the opening, and then the next day it's crickets. The staff and maybe three or four public are the only people there, you know?
Well, then here might be an interesting question. I know you've said, and other people have said too, that each local org sees this, but they are told that it's only their org that's failing. Scientology is expanding worldwide. But you, in your time in the Sea Org, must have seen many different orgs in many different parts of the country, all the same. How did you rationalize it when you must have known that it wasn't expanding everywhere else, that this wasn't a one-off, one org is failing? You must have seen multiple orgs failing. So how did you rationalize it?
Well, that's a good question. And the way that I did that was that there were small, medium, and big orgs. And we needed to get the small orgs to medium, and we needed to get the medium orgs to big. And by big were organizations like the one in Stevens Creek in San Jose, California, or Los Angeles org is always, kind of a bigger place because it's on pack base. But also in other continents, you would have big orgs. Milano was always known for bringing in lots of bodies, having lots of people, going outside of it, and them just body routing is what they called it. Hundreds of people a day, right? And we'd hear about this, and we'd be like, okay, good management, let them get going, do the job. And my take on it internally, having been a Scientology manager, was if only management would let these organizations get on with it, they'd blow up. They'd be, they would go crazy. There'd be nothing but expansion. But I felt it was middle management and upper management that was kind of stopping that from happening, because they were just demanding too much out of them. And they didn't just focus in on do this, and do this. Instead, every single organization, whether it was small, medium, or large, had the same kind of quotas, had to sell the same stuff to the same public. And that was kind of my big picture view of the situation. And so I figured they all could make it, and we want them to make it, but they're not making it because we're not, kind of giving them the independence too. And that's not a direct answer to your question, but it was kind of the way I would think about things at that time, before it finally dawned on me after the fourth Ideal Org opening and the second day after. And I realized that's when it hit me. It took 4 times. I've always said I'm a slow learner. 4 times. And I went, this is a little undeniable. These orgs are not taking off. This is not, the stats go up and then they crash. And I couldn't deny it at that point. And that was actually near the end of my time. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that strikes me. I mean, as somebody who leans libertarian, government get out of the way in general, your thought process seems quite rational. But I wonder how you squared that with the fact that these managers would probably have been people above you, and that it almost would have been considered, correct me if I'm wrong, would have been considered suppressive to question these people's intention.
Oh, absolutely. I never, ever questioned anybody's intentions in Scientology. I knew we all wanted the same things. I was frustrated with the mystery of where do all these insane orders come from? Because I didn't imagine while I was in that they were coming from the desk of David Miscavige. I still believed that there was an international management structure, that there were still people on post of some kind. I just couldn't contact them, or I didn't know who they were. I had no idea of the whole, of the abuse, of the blows, the people taken off. All of that was hidden away from all of us. We didn't have a clue what was going on up on top. And so it was kind of this black box mystery of, you could send, inputs and outputs, but you didn't know what was going on inside the box, right? You could send communication up, you'd get communication back. Nobody's name was on it. It was just a post. We just didn't have any clue what was going on. Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're basically saying in a nutshell is you wouldn't have blamed COB as he was, but there must have been somebody in the middle who was the problem. Is that correct?
Yes, that's how I thought of it. I just thought somehow if international management or upper middle management could get their shit together, because it was okay to target them. I knew some of them. You know what I mean? It wasn't like they were these all nameless, faceless people, but it was never okay to target Miscavige. So it could never be his fault, right?
Well, again, this just gives me more evidence, more ammunition to thinking that maybe the leaders of China at the moment have read all about Scientology, because that's how China's operating right now. You can question the local mayor, you can question the party chief, you might even be encouraged to do so, but don't you dare talk about Xi Jinping or the Politburo Standing Committee.
That's right.
People don't. They lay all the blame for everything at the foot of the local government, but they don't, they're not allowed to ask, where did the orders to the local government come from?
Exactly. And I'll take that one step further, Dave, and I will say it's actually human nature to do that. You don't even have to be taught it,
go on.
Because we're hyper aware of what we can see right in front of us. And David Miscavige was up in the rarefied air, right? But I could I could blame it on somebody I could see or sense or knew who was there. So I think it's a similar thing in China with those people.
Oh, it is. But the thing that both Scientology and China also have in common here that's a little difficult to square with it theoretically, but we can see this in practice, is that the COB and Xi Jinping are both quite public at the very top, parading around doing propaganda for their organizations, and yet they still manage to deflect blame to the people under them. I don't understand. But it's like, when we see it's true, we can see and observe this, but I don't really understand where it comes from.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different layers going on there. I mean, hierarchies, we have to have them, idols, or we idolize the top of the leadership. We pretend, for whatever reason, that's kind of, I'll say, built into us, that they are flawless, perfect representatives, the epitome of all that is good and wonderful.
Yeah.
And we kind of need that belief in order to maintain a belief in the entire structure, Because the person we have to have a human who epitomizes or idealizes, the vision that we want it to be, and so we kind of imbue that. I think
we're going into a different. I think we're going into a different area of psychology here. What Probably. I was trying to get at was what you said there about the fact that it was all blamed at the upper middle management. The COB wasn't really a part of it. It's more at the time, David Miscavige could have been a figure a bit more in the shadows, so it's easier to miss him because you don't see him and you don't see his name on anything, but you do see the names of these people you knew in upper middle management. But nowadays, David Miscavige is up there very publicly.
Yeah,
there seems to be a bit of cognitive.
I get where you're coming from on that. I will kind of fall back to what I was saying before, though, because I think it does address the problem you're bringing up. Only in that when I returned to my headspace back then, I was hyper aware of the fact that David Miscavige was around. He wasn't hidden from view for me.
Yeah.
It was just he was unquestionable. He couldn't.
Did you buy into Scientology? Sorry. Did you?
Go ahead.
Did you buy into Scientology's propaganda that they put to the courts that David Miscavige is the ecclesiastical leader who doesn't do much day to day? Was that what was presented to you? Or?
Yes, it was. We all understood that to be the case. RTC was always defined, the Religious Technology Center, Miscavige's organization, was always understood within the church to be separate and above the management of the church. And the reason that this created a lot of the reason this created a lot of cognitive dissonance for us and conflict was because he kept managing. And it was obvious he was managing. Yeah. But it couldn't be that he was managing because his position dictated that he not manage. And that was kind of
this. You can't say that out loud.
Well, and you couldn't, and you didn't. And yet you did. I mean, it was so this is what I'm talking about with this path of double binds of this is true and this is true, but they can't both be true at the same time. It's crazy making. It really makes your head, you just spin. David, I'm going to have to let you go in a second because I got a couple more calls in the queue, but did you have any other significant points before I let you go?
So, I will just say very briefly, I had one other thing to talk about, but I think we're going to have to leave that another week in that case.
Okay.
But I will just say then that is a point of divergence between Scientology and China, because within China, Xi Jinping is not the constitutional monarch, the powerless figurehead. He is the source of authority and the source of directives and the great helmsman, as they're now calling him. But at the same time, he still manages to palm off responsibility to local government. At least within the bubble world of Scientology, as you just expressed it, the Scientologists believe that David Miscavige, officially believe that David Miscavige is the ecclesiastical constitutional monarch above it. They don't believe that in China, and they don't pretend to believe that. So there is a major point of divergence there that doesn't really make sense, but it's there.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Well, thank you for that. Always appreciate your views.
Absolutely. Great to be back.
All right, man. All right, I'm going to let you go. Talk to you soon, all right?
Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, yes. Bye-bye.
All right. Just because we got 3 other calls in the queue, and I really don't want to keep you guys waiting, so let's pick up the next one here. Hello, is this Darla?
It is, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for holding.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Enjoying your new... I'm doing pretty well. Just one comment. I'm not as intelligent as the gentleman that calls in every week. So my question...
You don't even worry about it. What you got for us? This is not a competition.
Okay. I kind of got lost in the whole China and Scientology thing, and I'm like,
sure.
Oh, yeah. But anyways, one thing, are y'all enjoying your dog?
Our dog?
Oh yes, our dog. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's a little loud, and so we kind of had to.
For being a little dog, he has a big bark.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. We didn't do any Benson Cam this week, but yeah, he is. He's slowly but surely getting under control. Let's put it that way.
There's nothing like a dog, huh?
No, there's not. It's like I'm just gonna call it. It's a lot like having a kid. I know it's not a kid. But damn, do you have to deal with a lot of the same kind of things, just as not as maybe as it at extreme a level, I suppose. You know?
Yeah, I got a dog that if I don't do what he wants me to do, you talk about a glare.
Mm-hmm.
My dog has a glare.
Mm-hmm. And they don't leave you alone.
Nope.
It's like kids. They'll just paw you and jump on you and bark at you until you give them what they want. And there's just no amount of quiet, calm down, go over there. They don't. Nope. They want what they want, and they're gonna get it.
That's so true. So true.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing is about the news. What I want to say in regards to voting. I know that you don't really bring in politics on your podcast. However, I just want to say that it is really important for these state votes right now because, we'll just, for the most recent of the Roe versus Wade, if we don't get the right people in there, like all of these things are going to be taken away from
Correct.
us.
Yes.
And it is just, I know we have the whole presidential election and all of that, but you really need to look at your representatives, your senators, your governors, everybody, and, get people, research it. It's getting kind of late, I've already voted, but, it is important. So, I just want to say that.
Definitely.
The other thing is in regards to the trial of Danny Masterson.
Yep.
From everything, from Tony Ortega, his point of view is that the defense is not really getting up to the plate and really, cross-examining these people very well, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that they have a different plan for whenever it comes their turn to, when the prosecution rests and then the defense takes over?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that they have up their sleeve to bring out if they're not bringing anything out right now?
Well, the things that you do as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, obviously, right? And but as I understand things with this kind of case, all you need to do as a defense lawyer in this is give the jury a reasonable reason or set of reasons or ideas to doubt any part of what the women are saying, because if there is even one or two reasonable doubts as to, these women's stories and the testimony they give, then you got to acquit, right? That's the law. And so if you have this reasonable doubt about it, then it's all good. So these women have to be very convincing, and so far the testimony certainly has convinced me, but I obviously am biased. We want the jurists to be unbiased, but at the same time, this is some pretty heavy stuff. So the defenses are going to be all about poking as many holes in their stories as possible, using whatever ammunition they've got, other people's testimony, supporting witnesses, etc. Masterson obviously isn't going to go on the stand, because that would, at least according to my chat with my friend Cyprian, that would open up all kinds of doors nobody wants opened. So he probably won't be seeing Masterson testify, but we will see, the other witnesses that they've got on their list coming forward. And it's kind of interesting that there aren't character witnesses, as we were talking about in the podcast. But I think that it's going to be concentrated, focused on poking holes in the stories. And then it's, then the jury is appealed to, like, well, look, how can you trust these stories? There's this hole, there's this problem, there's this contradiction. This can't, this just can't, you can't believe them. I think that's where they're going.
But but the reports kind of are going to contradict that. Would you think that?
Well, I believe their testimony, and I believe, in fact, one of the points that was made today by the expert witness who came on is that you would expect certain details to not be the same from one telling of one story to another, especially over time. Memories change, etc. The significant parts of the story shouldn't change. The significant acts that are being reported on shouldn't change. But minor details or, points of, well, this happened, but then, maybe another time, oh, this also happened. That would be routine. She brings up correctly, at least according to the reporting today, it would be actually weird if the story was constantly the same from one telling to the next. That's when you would start suspecting, wait a minute, maybe this person's actually just reading from a script,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't think that, these girls didn't even know until, 5 years ago or 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
that, so they, what I'm saying, they didn't even know each other. So their stories are so much alike. It's just, repulsive.
That's
Danny
what I
Masterson
think.
is,
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think the similarities are what's more important here. I hope that's how the jury's approaching this.
That's what I'm hoping also.
Yeah.
And, I'm very biased also. I cannot stand the Church of Scientology. I've been on this for years now. But the other thing I want to ask is, how do I send you a super chat?
Oh, it's just on the, I think there's a thing to send it. I don't know. Oh, it's at the bottom of the comments. At the bottom of the comments, there's a box with a $sign, and you click on that, and that's how you send a super chat.
Okay.
I should have figured that out before I even started doing this, but yeah, it's on the chat box there, it looks like.
On the chat box. Okay, I'll go to the bottom of that.
Great.
Finally, I got some money to give you. I saved a little bit.
Yay!
Remember, I told you I live on an old woman that lives on limited income, but hey, I'm going to buy you all a cup of coffee and buy you a bag of dog food.
Awesome. That works. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very appreciated, Darla.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you later.
You all take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Awesome. Well, we got more calls in the queue, so we're just going to keep picking them up here. And hello, you are on. Is this Anthony?
Hi, it is. How you doing, Chris and Mel?
Hey. Welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be back, man. Always a pleasure to talk.
Yeah. What you got for us today?
So the title of your stream today is about trials, and of course the big one, the big Scientology related one is the Danny Masterson trial.
Yep.
Which I've been following closely. It's kind of, a lot. I'm a big trial follower. I like the Law and Crime channel a lot, and they usually it seems like all the notable trials they can have a live stream in the courtroom, but they can't do it with this one. So I've been relying mostly on Tony Ortega's little videos that he does after each full segment.
Yep.
But everything really that I could say about that has already been being said, and so I don't really have much to comment on that. But I wanted to actually, that brings me to a question that's not really Scientology related, but kind of running out of those questions for you. Honestly, you've answered so many of them so well, and I'm sure I'll come up with more. But sometimes I'm just like, I can't think of anything Scientology related to ask Chris. He's really covered so much of them. And of course, you're so thorough in all your videos. You kind of answer them before I ask them.
Awesome.
But have you been following other major criminal trials at the moment?
I've been paying attention to the reporting on the Spina trial. That's another Scientology related one. A couple Scientology chiropractors, I think Jeff Spina and his brother, going to jail. I think they were found guilty, or that's happening, and they were defrauding like Medicaid and Medicare or something to the tune of like $9 million. So they're going away.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of updated this week or last week. And then there's the trial down in Florida, and I'm waiting anxiously to see what the judge does down there. This is the human rights trial against the three people who were children in Scientology are bringing against Miscavige and the church and the Free Winds. And I'm hoping, cross my fingers, but I'm expecting the worst, but I'm hoping for the best, that they don't get sent off to contract arbitration like was done with Luis Garcia and Valerie Haney. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's where that's at right now. And otherwise, there was that other trial that has nothing to do with Scientology. I can't remember the guy's name right now. It was kind of a big deal. People were paying a lot of attention to it. It was the sovereign citizen guy who got found guilty, and it was most interesting because he was being crazy in court.
The Christmas parade?
Yes, that guy who ran over a bunch of people and went like 30 miles an hour into a parade and then defended himself. He was his own. He fired his public defender and was doing it himself, and he was making a complete farce out of the entire operation, because he's total moron.
I watched that.
Yeah,
I definitely watched that. I literally at one point
Brooks,
made
that was it.
Popcorn.
Daryl Brooks, yes. Yeah, I think a lot of people have been popping a lot of popcorn watching Daryl Brooks act like an idiot. And I agree. That judge was an absolute saint on that. That was a comment here.
What is with these people that have lots of money, or at least a decent amount of money, have to steal from the poor and the disabled and the elderly? I mean, that's what you're doing when you're defrauding Medicare and Medicaid, and that's what what's his face, the football
the Spina brothers, yeah,
and that's what the football player did too. So I'm just like, why do you have to? Why?
Yeah, Brett Favre.
Yeah.
That Brett Favre thing. Yeah, it is. It's horrific what people get up to. They just feel like, they feel entitled somehow. Yeah, exactly. But please go on. You were saying, Anthony.
No. I definitely followed the Daryl Brooks trial very closely, the one you were talking about. I think that's just a case of someone who is so delusional and so off in their own world that he literally thought he could win. No, I truly believe that. I truly believe that in his mind, he literally thought that he was a genius, and he was smarter than the judge. He was smarter than all the lawyers, and he could figure it all out on his own. But he also has bipolar. I don't know. His mother claims he has a mental illness. I don't know how much of that is feigned, but he definitely seems to be exhibiting a lot of symptoms. I was in a relationship with someone who had bipolar disorder, and the relationship ended very badly between us. And I literally had to block this person because they were just so aggressive and so relentless in their attempt to contact me. And so his sort of like I saw a lot of similarities. I would totally believe that guy had bipolar disorder.
Sure. Sure. Well, obviously we don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised by lots of different diagnoses on that guy. He demonstrated all kinds of very bizarre behaviors in the course of that, and of course with the crime he committed. The trial was sort of lunacy on display, but his actions were psychotic, and he definitely is a danger to society, and he needs to be put away. So I'm happy for the outcome, as insane as it was to get there.
Really quick, I want to quickly get to the reason I was calling, because I know you have other callers you're waiting on. I actually wanted to talk about the Nicholas Cruz trial, or the Parkland shooter, because he already pled guilty last year, and that there was a recent trial to determine whether or not he would get the death penalty or whether or not he'd get life in prison. Are you familiar with all that?
I was familiar with it to the degree that I saw the parents talking, doing the victim statements, and that he was going away for life. That's what I saw this week on that one.
Right. And I watched those, very powerful, very, very emotional statements from all of them.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, the point I was actually talking about was actually about the death penalty, because there are certain moral issues that I don't have an answer on in my head. There's certain things, if you were to ask me, well, is this right? Or is this wrong? I would have to say, well, still figuring that out, man. I'll talk to you later. So at the moment, honestly, the Parkland trial and the testimony for these parents has put me in that spot with the death penalty, because before the Parkland trial, I would have said I'm against it, and I would have been very comfortable in that viewpoint. And watching the Parkland trial, I assumed, based on it being in Florida and based on how hard the crime was, I just assumed it would be the death penalty, and so I thought, well, there's nothing. That it's going to happen sometimes, I guess. But then when it didn't, I was very surprised. And then when I saw all the testimony of the parents and how upset they were about that, I couldn't help but be on their side. And so it's put me in sort of this quandary where I'm like, well, maybe for this guy, it's appropriate. What do you think?
I think that the death penalty is overused. I do not agree with the death penalty in principle. I think context always matters.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard for me to ever advocate for a single rule that applies every time in every case, always, because I'm such a firm advocate for, look, context is king in everything. But I don't find very many, for myself in the moral plane that I live in, I believe life is valuable, and I believe that people can change. And I am not at all, of course, trying to advocate that the Parkland shooter is a great guy deep down. That's, not what I'm saying. I'm saying people can change, and time is the only thing that's going to tell you that. Right.
Also, staying alive in prison to me seems much worse than.
And that's the thing. That's exactly where I was going to go. Is if you actually want to punish somebody for their sins, relegating them to a life outside of society, banishment, in other words, which is kind of very old school idea, is a far greater punishment than just killing them. I mean, you kill them, that's it. They're gone. They're not suffering anymore. They're gone. So who's that satisfying? Who's that for? And I also have a very, very serious set of chips on my shoulder, not just one, about the organization and care of our prisoners in general. I think our prison system is a barely covered over, slave labor system. I think there are serious philosophical problems with how we approach crime and punishment and rehabilitation. And I think that if those things aren't addressed or fixed, why are we jumping to this extremity of punishment when everything in between needs so much work and revision and isn't getting it? prisoners are always relegated to the lowest class of society. They're the untouchables. They're the people nobody wants to think about, talk about, give much sympathy to. And yet they are still human beings, folks, and they're not all mass murderers. There's a lot of people in there. And according to the Innocence Project and other statistics we have, a bunch of them shouldn't even be there in the first place. Then you got the war on drugs and the number of problems with people being incarcerated for that. So we've got a big incarceration problem, big prison problem, and I would like to see those things addressed from a much more humane point of view, rather than, I said, jumping to this extremity of punishment. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just tossing out a lot of word salad there. I hope not. I'm trying to express where I'm coming from.
No, I get you, man. It's just been one of those things for me where I've been super back and forth. I've seen, I've gone through the past few, from the viewpoint of what I was raised in, there was the teaching that, no, the death penalty is like, and the sort of branch of Catholicism I was raised in, the teaching was like, no, the death penalty is totally justified. Like, people, like, if you're a mass murderer, of course you, like, it wasn't saying it applied to all crimes. It was just saying, if you're bad people deserve the death penalty, and that was pretty much cut and dry. That Catholicism is very sort of cut and dry. It's very sort of, that's it. It's sort of, rub your hands and say, like, problem solved, move on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the kind of attitude. That's the kind of attitude. So, but it's so much more complicated than that, and I realize that more and more as I go through life, especially with issues about life and death.
That's right.
Because
That's right.
I don't know. It's for me. You said you watched those parents' testimonies and those where they got to address the shooter directly and like talk to his face. And honestly, some of the most powerful thing. One of the most powerful speeches. I don't know what you want to call it. Things I've ever seen, because I couldn't help but put myself in their situation and just think of my family members and people who I love, and just put myself in their shoes, and I thought I would feel the exact same way. And I thought I wouldn't give it.
Yeah, let me jump on that for just a second, because I want to address that, and then I'm going to have to let you go because I still got other calls in the queue, and we're running out of time here. So
totally understand.
Cool. So let me just say this, and then we'll move on. Okay.
Yeah.
How you feel is how almost everybody's going to feel when faced with a devastating loss by violence or by tragedy. People want justice. They want tit for tat. It is as far as I can tell, biologically speaking, I mean, really getting into the roots of how we are and why we behave the way we do. Tit for tat is the most basic equation I think we run on. So when we have a loss, when we have something gone, we want that person to have something gone of equal magnitude, and we feel this is a life taken. We are owed a life, and that's all feeling. And that's why we need the structures of our systems in place to make us better than our feelings.
Yeah.
And that's my statement on that, because you're not wrong, and no one's wrong for feeling that way.
No.
But is that feeling and is carrying out the actions driven by those feelings really the best thing for you, for society, for that person, for the victims, or do we have a better idea? And that's where our systems come into play to put something there that's better than that. And that's kind of how I think about that.
Well, and something that's not hypocritical, you're saying it's bad to murder by killing someone.
Well, there is the hypocritical. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's that as well, right? The whole eye for eye thing.
Let's do something that makes more sense.
Exactly. All right, Anthony, I got to let you go. So
I appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for calling in with this one.
Well, appreciate your answers. Have a good one.
You too.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. All right, just because we are taxed for time, so let us rip through some of these other ones here. Hello, this is Rona. Hi, are you on?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Hey, thank you so much for patiently waiting so long.
No problem. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How can I help you this evening?
Thanks. So I have a question about the whole. Is this okay to ask on this show, or should I mail it?
No. Go ahead. Fire away. This is a call-in show, so if people call me with questions, I'm not going to turn them away. I just wanted people to know in the comments I'm not looking for the questions. So.
Okay, great. I just wanted to check. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, recently Mike Rinder released his book, and, I was seeing all kinds of interviews with him online. And what I don't understand is, like, kidnapping is a felony, right? And I looked up what is the statute of limitations on kidnapping in California, and there is no statute of limitations. So why aren't criminal charges brought? Like, there have been not just Mike Rinder, right? Other people who have escaped and have experienced the whole. So can't all these people together with their experiences, can't that be enough to press charges? And why doesn't it happen?
Sure. Well, the person who would be able to answer the question best, of course, would be the attorney general or prosecutor, who would be the one to decide whether those charges would be brought. And those decisions are made almost exclusively on how much evidence do we have, not testimony, but evidence. And is this prosecutable? Is this winnable? Is this a case that the state should invest time and money and effort into in order to prosecute so as to get a good result and serve justice? Those are important questions prosecutors have to ask themselves. And when it comes to stuff like this, you're dealing with years old stuff for the most part, especially if we're talking about Rinder's stuff. And we're talking about a lack of evidence. And we're also talking about, when it comes to Scientology, we have an organization that has already shown that when you come after them, they can produce 20 affidavits, signed statements from people in Scientology saying that guy's a liar, that never happened. And, the police and the prosecutors are in the middle going, well, here's this guy, or here are these people saying this, but then they have to give weight to what the church and what the people in the church are also saying, especially when they have signed, sworn statements. And that has been a problem in bringing charges or, stuff like that against any cult group. And Scientology is, of course, a cult group. So, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it just sucks. I was just thinking it's enough
it
multiple witnesses have
it sucks.
stories. And, like, what if there's, Google images of, we have proof that there was a double wide trailer here? No, we can find the guard who was posted outside, and now he's willing to testify. Or,
right.
I'm sure all the physical evidence is probably destroyed unless...
you bet it is.
They get off on it or something,
Absolutely. No, it's all gone. And I'd be surprised if those double wide trailers are still standing. You know what I mean? They probably salted the earth. I mean, there's probably nothing there. And, and how do you even begin? Do the people even want to do that? Does Rinder even want to go bring charges? Does Debbie Cook? Do all these other people? It is a monumental task, as these women taking on Danny Masterson have shown and proven. It is really something to take on a destructive cult like Scientology, because what you're not seeing is all the harassment and stalking and personal nonsense that's going on with them to this day. That takes a toll, I'm not saying it's right.
And it's
not saying it's
the trial making thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying I'm offering all of this, and somebody could go, oh, what are you, on Scientology's side or something? I'm like, no, it sucks. It's hard,
Yeah, it does. It makes me really angry, and I have nothing to do with Scientology. I've never had anything to do with it. It's still just as citizen. It makes me so angry.
Yes, me too. It really does. And that's actually kind of one of the reasons I keep doing what I'm doing here. It's because somebody's got to like keep bringing this up and bringing this out and talking to people about it. And that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I'm doing enough.
Thank you so much for taking.
You're
doing a lot. You know, you can't do everything.
Yeah, tell my Scientology self that. No, Rona, thank you for calling in with this. I do appreciate it. And I don't want to leave you in hopelessness. It's not like nothing can be done. It's just, in answer to your question, it's a formidable task. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'm the kind of person who's up for formidable tasks in the interest of justice, but I get if they have to pick and choose, they're what they prosecute. It just sucks. It does.
It does suck. And I definitely agree with you on that.
Okay. Thank you for taking my call. Thank you.
You bet, Rona. Bye-bye. All right. Okay, we have one more call we are going to take for time, and then we're going to have to let go. So here we go. Is this Catherine?
Hi, Chris, it's great to talk to you. I've listened to your show for years.
Awesome. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I've got sort of a two-part question. I watched Jordan Klepper's new special on QAnon supporters, and I was wondering what you would have to say about jury selection with conspiratorial thinkers. Can and should we sort of weed out people who are not capable of making rational, logical decisions about the reality-based world? And I just was really curious about what your thought about that would be.
Right. Here's the theory as I understand it about, say, juries. You want to weed out bias. I believe it would be a path fraught with peril and danger to try to weed out people who don't think well according to your standards of how you think people should think.
But they don't. They already do it for bias. I mean, most lawyers are looking for someone that's going to agree with their side, and that's how they try to set it up. So,
I guess my thinking is it's just such a dichotomous worldview, a very black and white worldview that when Democrats, for example, are all evil. So if you have someone that you're, a jurist,
I get it. No, totally. I believe that there could be lines drawn in terms of incompetence, in terms of, an inability to actually think clearly, right? But cognitively, and this is a challenging thing to say, and this is a long conversation, and I'm trying to do it in a very short period of time, but cognitively speaking, conspiracy theorists are actually not horrible at some of the tools of critical thinking. They do think through sequences. Right. They can think in cause effect. They can think in, okay, this happens and then this happens and then this happens. The problem with conspiracy theorists is they have their confirmation bias on overdrive. They've got a very fixed idea of why something's happening or what's happening, and they gather facts around them to support that view and won't look at or refuse to look at any facts that contradict what they're saying. We all do that, though. So cognitively speaking, they're really not doing anything that weird. What they're doing is they're dialing up what they want to confirm. And that's how you would actually weed them out of a jury selection process, is through that kind of biased thinking. If it was going to affect the trial.
No interest.
What's that?
Right. Yeah, it just seems that there's no interest in objectivity at all. Like, they don't live in the same sort of information silo that you lived in. They have access.
Yeah, I think by the time you're definitely... Yeah, I definitely agree that by the time you're talking about somebody at a QAnon level or a flat earth level, I agree. You're dealing with somebody who is very disconnected from reality, and that might be a basis to come after them. But you'd have to establish some kind of baselines or tests or something to make it fair. Otherwise, it really opens the door to some places we don't want to go. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a negative, there's unintended consequences down that road that none of us want.
Sure. I completely understand. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You bet. You bet. And I'd love to talk more about that at some point in the future if you want to call again.
Oh, great. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, good. All right, guys. Sorry, we're going to have to wrap up now in terms of the calls coming in. So that is the end of our calls. Yeah, that was the phone disconnecting. And let's go ahead and wrap up. I did want to thank the super chats. Yeah. And there was a question that came in on a super chat. And yes, you will get your answer if you super chat me. So Marco, I want to thank you for yours. And let's back up because there was also Darla. Yes, thank you very much for your support of this show. Very much appreciated. Marco, if I wanted to read a few LRH books to get an understanding of the insane things he wrote / believed, like OT3, which ones can I get on eBay? I won't order from Bridge, I promise. If you want to buy a book available on eBay that will show you just how crazy and down the rabbit hole Scientology can go, then buy Scientology, A History of Man. That's the name of the book, A History of Man. You won't be sorry. It's got some of the most batshit crazy stuff in it you will ever read. It doesn't have Xenu in it. Xenu is not something you're going to get on eBay because that's confidential stuff, and that's in confidential levels on Scientology, and that's available just from Googling. You don't even have to go buy it. But books-wise, that's the one I would go into. Another one that you might take a look at that's no longer in print, but you can probably find it on eBay or around at used bookstores or somewhere, would be Have You Lived Before This Life? And this book was written, I think, in 1958, and it is a collection of anecdotes by Scientologists from their auditing of past life memories that they had. And you will read some of the craziest stuff. Just stuff that people have just pulled out of their imagination and made up in response to Scientology auditing. And it really shows really how imaginative and creative people can be without even realizing that's what they're doing. And shows also the depths of which the space opera, sci-fi stuff, and fantasy elements of Scientology can go. And I'll just comment on how empowering that can feel when you're doing it. It's not necessarily in those books, but man, when you are getting that auditing, it doesn't really get talked about enough because I talk about the awe euphoria experience as this negative thing of like it's gonna hook you and catch you. But man, it's powerful. I was talking to Mel this week and remembering some of that stuff, like really full force, like what it felt like to remember stuff from a million years ago and feel as a Scientologist that I had my finger on the pulse of some truth, that I was in the inner circle of awareness and power and ability as little old me on this planet. It really does give you this superiority, this superior feeling, and that's always worth commenting on, I think. So there's the answer to your question. Okay, and we have gone a little over time. Let us do our critical thinking cards. I did not even get to the quotes and stuff I wanted to give you guys tonight, and that's fine. Maybe I'll do a live stream again this next week, and we'll cover it there. But this is our critical thinking and logical fallacy cards. What do we got this week?
Belief bias. If a conclusion supports your existing beliefs, you'll rationalize anything that supports it. It's difficult for us to set aside our existing ideas to consider the true merits of an argument. In practice, this means that our beliefs become impervious to criticism and are perpetually reinforced. A useful thing to ask is, when and how did I get this belief?
Questions. When and how did you get this belief? It's a great question and a much better way of responding to odd beliefs than, well, that's stupid. You'll get a lot farther, a lot faster with people if you ask them questions about their goofball beliefs rather than judging them for it. Depending on where you're trying to go, of course, you know. All right. Okay, so yeah, I even had a slideshow for you guys this week. I want to give a little shout out to one of my viewers who didn't ask for it, so I won't give his name, but he sent me some artwork and stuff, and we'll go over it next week because I have it all prepped for you guys. Is some AI produced artwork that I've been wanting to show you guys. So, oh yes, okay. So tomorrow is a non-Scientology cult member escapee on my podcast, Sensibly Speaking podcast. You will hear from Spencer Schneider, and he wrote a book about this very bizarre cult of personality that built up around this woman, this former actress in New York, that he got wrangled into. And the recruit process was actually the most fascinating part of it. The cult stuff was pretty standard, but how he got in and how long it took and all of that. So we have a nice hour-long chat on that tomorrow. And then I'll have a pre-recorded usual Q&A show on Sunday. All right, guys. And with that, let's go ahead and end off. Thanks for coming around, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Good night.